It's our penultimate program of 2013, and it starts with next year's Winter Olympics. They're happening in February in the Russian city of Sochi. There's been some controversy involving the games and about a Russian law regarding homosexuality. Now, under the law, it is not illegal to be homosexual, but it is illegal to promote homosexuality or same-sex relationships to minors. Russian President Vladimir Putin says everyone, athletes and spectators, will be welcome at the Olympics. Yesterday, the U.S. announced its delegation for the Olympics, the people who will represent the U.S. in Sochi. Some analysts think that who's going and who's not could be sending a message. The delegation includes several openly homosexual American athletes. It doesn't include President Obama, any member of the First Family, or any members of the presidential cabinet. The first time in more than 10 years that's happened. Next up, diplomacy, how countries and governments interact. The U.S. and North Korea don't have diplomatic relations, so you don't usually see officials from one country meeting with officials from the other. One high-profile American is visiting North Korea's leader, but we're not talking about an ambassador or government employee. It's a former pro basketball star.
With his piercings, tattoos and at times outlandish behaviour, there's no denying former NBA star Dennis Rodman loves attracting attention. And where he's heading, it's certain the world will be watching, as the 52-year-old makes his third visit into a country ruled by one of the world's most repressive regimes.
I want to bridge a gap with North Korea. That's all I want.
It comes at a time of dramatic political upheaval in North Korea. Just last week, the country's young leader, Kim Jong-un, had his uncle executed, in what some experts believe is just the beginning of many more purges to come. A power struggle is believed to be the reason why he had his mentor and second-in-command allegedly killed by machine gun fire. And with all the instability, it would appear that the supreme leader could use a good friend.
And I'll call him my friend. He's my friend. If you hate my guts, but he's my friend.
Rodman is travelling with a documentary crew that will film him training the North Korean basketball team. They're preparing for an exhibition match in January against a group of former pro basketball players to celebrate the birthday of Kim Jong-un, a die-hard basketball fan. Many are wondering whether Rodman will raise the issue of 45-year-old American missionary Kenneth Bae, who was sentenced to 15 years prison in Pyongyang for what authorities say was an attempt to overthrow the regime. But Rodman says this trip isn't political, although on previous visits he has made himself available for basketball diplomacy, offering to be a mediator between his close friend Kim and US President Barack Obama.
And this guy just want to do one thing. Let's have a conversation with you. That's it. So why, Obama, are you afraid to talk to Dennis Rodman?
Anna Corrin, CNN, Seoul.
Well, some of you Bulldogs out there have been dogged in your determination to get on roll call. Here's your day, starting with the Bulldogs from West York Area High in York, Pennsylvania. Then it's over to Ohio, where we check in with the Green High School Bulldogs. And our last Bulldogs are out in California. Garfield High School in Los Angeles wraps up the roll. Scientists say last month was the warmest November on record. Now, it might not have felt like that in the U.S., but North America was an exception. The global average temperature for November was 56.6 degrees Fahrenheit. That's more than a degree above the 20th century average. We don't know if that explains what you're about to see, but in nature, when something changes, it can have a far-reaching impact.
A feeding frenzy along the California coast, like none ever recorded.
And talking to the old timers, the fishermen that have been out here for 60 years, they've never seen anything like this.
Monterey Bay, now a massive soup bowl, as the locals call it, feasting humpback whales. They should have gone south months ago.
What would keep whales like this here?
We're talking about miles and miles of anchovies, mountains deep.
And it's not just whales. There are sea lions in droves, even killer whales.
You've got to understand the entire food chain to get to understand this, and you won't know that unless you know more about the weather and the currents of the oceans.
Knowing more, a top priority for climate researchers as they grapple with new environmental trends.
One of my favorite sayings right now is we may be experiencing global weirding.
The Pacific recently has seen its fair share of weird.
Ooh, nice
An
one, dude.
invasion of Humboldt squid up and down the California coast. Sea lion calves this year dying off in worrying numbers, and in recent weeks, disturbingly, sea stars from Alaska to San Diego wasting away, literally melting.
Starting to see animals that were common here 30 or 40 years ago, maybe shifting their ranges farther north.
Space might be the final frontier, but space tourism could let more people get there. Not cheap. One company is offering people the experience of what it's like to launch out into space.
Tourists could blast off into space as early as next year on Virgin Galactic's Spaceship Two. Until then, future astronauts can train for the rigors of space on Earth.
It's the real deal. We're training them just as we would a military pilot, a fighter pilot, or an astronaut.
More than 300 people have taken the two-day space training course at the NASTAR Center in Pennsylvania. The program centers around a state-of-the-art simulator, a human centrifuge that replicates what space travel feels like.
Firing sequence starts in 3, 2, 1.
You're going to see your G meter, your altimeter, your rear camera view, the visuals outside the spacecraft as you actually feel the forces of you launching up, a simulated weightlessness, and then re-entry back down to Earth.
The faster it spins, the more you feel the forces of gravity.
For extreme G forces or for prolonged sustained Gs, there is a very good risk of you being able to pass out. For those reasons, we want to make sure that you're trained properly.
Congratulations, you're in space.
You don't need a ticket to space to take this course, but it will cost you $3,000.
The future of space holds a lot of promise. Hopefully, hundreds, thousands of people will be traveling for various missions across the galaxy.
Well, for our next edition of Career Connections, you're in for a real treat. We're featuring Lane Lee. She's a baker and an entrepreneur in Atlanta, Georgia. It might sound like a sweet gig. Lee says that thanks to her dad, she's living out her dream. But one thing she doesn't sugarcoat, it takes a lot of hard work to be successful.
My name is Lane Lee, and I am a pastry chef and owner of Sweet and Simple Bakery. I fell into baking. I went to college for something completely different and ended up cooking for all of my sorority sisters and friends and family. So I went to culinary school so I could be hands-on. Wasn't great with monotony, and I figured being a chef, I can move around, be creative, something's different every day, and we get to eat our mistakes. I struggle with math and kind of have a fear of numbers, even though I measure and weigh things out every day. Trying to secure loans or get used to purchasing and cost control and checks and balances of owning a business, that was my biggest roadblock. One of my biggest mentors is a man named Robert. He's been able to sit me down and talk me through it and show me where my strengths are and be able to admit to where my weaknesses are. He's the reason I haven't closed the doors many times, because when I feel defeated, he lets me know that I'm not alone. I feel like this career chose me. I get to do centerpieces of people's most joyful days. I think that's my favorite part. It gets really hot, and we don't ever sit down. We're completely hands-on and physical. Stay in front of the trends, always be sharp in your skills. Continuing education is the best. Always stay on top of your game and so that you can keep up with everyone else.
Our last video today includes some dog sleds. Probably not what you had in mind, but hey, there are dogs, there's a sled, let's do this. This YouTube video features a toddler's Tundra Traveler, plus a pair of pups that turn into sled sleuths as they track down this runaway sled and then persistently push it down its path. Some of you might think these dog sled videos are awesome, and for others, it may not amount to much, but we never sled you astray, and at least we got some puns out of it. Back tomorrow with our last show of 2013. Hope to see you then.